I'm going to explain to you some of the tricks I use to make the mix as loud as possible, but without making it dirty. So, for drums, I create a group track and I send here all the instruments of the drum set. Or if I am using Addictive Drums, I just use the master track of the Addictive Drums. And there I use a limiter, but not any limiter, because usually limiters used to cut low frequencies, just to gain dynamic range. So when you are limiting a drum set, you usually lose all low frequencies from kick drum, the toms, and even the snare. So what I do is using a freeware plugin named TSE Saturated Driver, and it's great because it can boost a lot the drum track, but keeping all the low frequencies. But don't try to push too much the audio with this plugin because it will create some distortion. So, in my opinion, it's the best plugin for boosting the drum track. Then, for guitars, I create another group track and I send them the rhythm guitars. And I used to make the same for the extra guitars like solos or harmonies. And in these group tracks I use a limiter, in this case the Waves L2 limiter, a regular limiter that works great with guitars. And I set the limiter so it cuts 1 or 2 dBs just to cut especially the palm mutes. So to the master track I don't get peaks of level from guitars, it always gets very balanced. And it helps a lot for a loud mix because all instruments have no peaks. And for the rest of the instruments I basically do the same. For example, with the bass I use a limiter, the last of all the plugins, so it cuts all the peaks that makes the strokes on the bass. So besides cutting the peaks of the bass, it makes the level of the bass more controlled, more leveled. And the sun is making me hot. For voices I make it a little different. For each voice track I use a compressor, and then I create a group track again and send all the voices to this group track. And depending on the style of the song I limit more or less. For example, for a pop song I don't use to limit too much the voice because it's a style which don't need too much loudness. But for metal I used to limit a lot. And when using limiters, try to not get too much excited with them. I mean, it's better to limit less than needed than more than needed, or your mix will be dirty and less clear. Limiting is like everything in audio. I mean, all you have to do is practice, practice, and more practice. So always try new things, experiment with plugins, try new plugins. And experimenting, sometimes you learn a lot more than watching tutorials, not mine, of course. So, when all my tracks, all my instruments are limited, in the master track I use another limiter. I normally use again the TSE Saturated Driver, but since all instruments are limited, I don't limit too much in the master track because everything gets there already loud, already limited. You already have a more or less loud mix, so you don't need to limit too much the master track. So what I do is muting the drums, and the mix that I have without those drums, I try to make it always peak almost to 0 dBs, so the limiter in the master track doesn't have to limit the mix. So I have all the instruments, but the drums peaking almost at 0 dBs. And now what I do is unmute the drums, and now the mix will peak over 0 dBs, but everything over 0 dBs is the drums, the peak of the drums. So this limiter will only almost limit the drums, but not the rest of the instrument. So this way the mix is quite loud, but it's pretty clear, everything sounds almost perfect. as you can hear in my songs from Axon, which I never get tired of promoting. So, as I said before, but I repeat because it's very important, don't try to limit too much, don't try to get an extreme loud mix, because it can make your mix sound dirty and not clear. So always practice and don't focus too much in the loudness of the mix, but in the balance of the mix. Everything must sound good, not loud. And I've said already everything that I think it's important. So I hope it was useful for you, and as usual, see ya!
Es lo que tiene irle negro al sol. Ah.